Hey everybody, this one is about filing bar complaints. Okay, now this is something that Carrie on the jurisdiction conference call suggested that I do, and so I've been doing it. I really haven't seen any results, but he swears up and down about it. And Kerry's actually quite somebody I respect a lot. He's brilliant. He thinks outside the box and he comes up with stuff. And so we'll see. I'll give it a shot. Anyway, so this is the Texas bar grievance form, okay? And so in your states you're going to have different ones. But this is the one in Texas. So depending on what state you're in, there's going to be something similar but different. And one of the first things it says here is, I have or have not contacted the client attorney assistance program. Well, I'm not their client. And most, I guess, bar grievances are because people who are clients. And so, so I say I haven't. And then information. And there's all sorts of stuff in here about trying to collect information of you that you're one of the slaves, building a case against you. So I make sure and defeat all of that stuff. Like, for example, they want to know my title, Mr. Okay, that's a title of nobility. And so I say no titles. And I got my name spelt there, non-domestic mail, the snail mail address, zip code exempt, care of 6340 Lake Worth Boulevard, number 437, Fort Worth, Texas, zip code exempt, non-domestic mail without the United States, employer, NA, I do not work for government, and telephone numbers, none of your business, and NOYB is none of your business, but email, I give them an email address, driver's license, NA, see, date of birth. This is all trying to get evidence against you. Date of birth, that's hearsay. But I do remember finishing high school in 1975. And then a friend that they can contact, and he's agreed to that they can contact him, the phone number and the mailing snail mail address. So a lot of these questions are, maybe there's someone that's, are you a judge? No. Do you understand and write the English language? Yes. Who helped you prepare this form? Me. Anyway, so I put something in all of them. Now, Wayne K. Olson is a city attorney for the city of Euless. And he's not the prosecutor. And that's one thing I do is the prosecutor in any of these traffic cases is usually they're an assistant. And so I contact in Texas, you contact the city secretary and tell them you want the oath of office and the statement of anti-bribery statement for the city attorney and the assistant prosecutor. And there should be a delegation letter too. Now, you may get all of it, you may not, but you get whatever you can. So the reason I'm going after Wayne K. Olson is because he's a city attorney. And there's his address, city of Euless, Texas. I don't know what his phone number is. I have no idea what any other numbers of them are. Have you or a member filed a grievance about this attorney before? Nope. So then that's NA. And have you or a member of your family filed an appeal with the Board of Disciplinary Appeals about this attorney? Nope. NA. And please check one of the following. This attorney was hired to represent someone else. Okay, so he's representing me without authority. And we're going to go into that in a minute. If I hired the attorney, NA. The date attorney was hired, unknown. I don't know when they hired him. What attorney was hired to do? Represent the city of Euless. What was the fee arrangements? No idea. And how much did I pay? Nothing. I didn't pay him anything. And if you did not hire the attorney, what is your connection? I'm being assaulted by Euless Kangaroo Court under Olson's instructions. Are you currently represented by an attorney? Absolutely not. Do you claim the attorney has an impairment? Well, he's definitely got an impairment, but I'm not going to claim it. Did the attorney ever make any statements? No. County is Tarrant County, city of Euless. And is about a lawsuit. It's Euless Municipal Court. The title of the suit is State of Texas versus the Straw Man. And case number, I didn't have that. I forgot to put that in there, actually. I forgot. But anyways. If you're not a part of this suit, what is your connection with it? That's not applicable. And so then explain in detail if you think this attorney has done something improper, has failed to do something that should have been done, attach additional sheets if necessary. And so they don't want you sending originals of your evidence, so I make an affidavit, and we're going to go through that in a minute. And they're saying a copy of the grievance will be forwarded to the attorney. Good, good. I'm glad he's going to get it. So he's representing me without authority, perjury of oath, violating my rights and immunities under color of law, conspiring to threaten, injure, intimidate, and coerce me in the free exercise of my common law right to travel with my private property on the public highway, official oppression, criminal street gang, all of which and more as evidence in the affidavit that is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference in its entirety. And so... and then I sign it there in red ink. And this is the actual affidavit. Okay, so this is an actual affidavit of complaint. Notice the footer. Put a footer on it. And I always talk about the corporate denial. So this is where you need that corporate denial filed. This is where you file a notice of void judgment into the case and attach that corporate denial and as evidence, okay? And so then I'm using the notice of void judgment as evidence that's got all that stuff attached to it, that's been filed into their court, that's got their file stamps all over it, and I'm using that as evidence against the liar. And so all through this document, I'm talking about this notice of void judgment by affidavit that I filed, and then I'm using it as evidence against these liars. So I was assaulted by the U.S. military police who issued citations for the Roman cult Satanic Trust for failure to maintain financial responsibility and no registration, as evidenced in the police report, which is attached to the notice of void judgment. Okay, so you got to build a case, and you file that notice of void judgment, and you attach all your evidence to it, and then you use that as evidence against the liar. And Stacy White is the prosecutor. And is an officer of the court and is required to know everything contained herein. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating constitutional right, for they are deemed to know the law. Stacy White was hired by Wayne K. Olson, works under his direction and supervision. U.S. military police also charged their Roman cult Satanic Trust with failure to identify fugitives for justice, which is alleged to be a Class B misdemeanor, as evidence in the probable cause determination commitment order, true copy of which is attached to the notice of void judgment. Okay, it's all attached to that notice of void judgment. And then I go through Texas has been under a military occupation since 1863 when the Union Army invaded Texas. There's three kinds of martial law: full martial law, there's martial law proper, and there's martial law rule. Full martial law is used when there's an actual invasion or armed insurrection. Martial law proper is the law of the armed forces, and martial law rule is the law of emergency and necessity, and is used during peace times. And that's taken from Ex parte Milligan. All police are military police. This is taken from Libre Code Article 10. And all military police are privateers operating on the high seas of commerce. And because they're all U.S. citizens from the District of Columbia and operating under international law. Okay, these are all cases that I use in a lot of my videos and all of my documents. And so they're operating under the international law rule because the law of war falls under international law. Martial law only affects subjects of the enemy and aliens. And subjects are government employees and corporations, anything created by government, or have received privileges by way of contract. Okay, and the rights of sovereignty extend to all persons and things not privileged within the territory. They extend to all strangers resident therein, not only to those who are naturalized therein, and to those who are domiciled, having taken up their abode. All strangers are under the protection of the sovereign. Okay, so let a state be considered as subordinate to the people, and everything else be subordinate to the state. And subjects are subject to regulation, therefore property, and slaves are property. And this is Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 of the Constitution. Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations, okay, respecting the other property belonging to the United States. So if you're subject to the regulations, then you're a slave, you're property. That's what a slave is property. And this is in Canada. This is the definitions of the Canadian Ownership and Control Act. And own means subject to the regulations. Military jurisdictions, two kinds: statutes and the common law of war. All statutes are international law. All statutes are edicts under martial law. There's court cases that talk about it. And when a judge is the judge is a bought and paid for clerk masquerading as a judge, a military commissioner. It's the accepted rule not only of state courts but of the federal courts as well. When a judge is enforcing administrative law, they're described as mere extensions of the administrative agency for superior reviewing purposes. So these are all cases that I talk about in my other videos. The Federal Tax Lien Act. When a clerk masquerading as a judge is an agent of administrative agency, it's always a kangaroo court and a bill of pains and penalties. A bill of pains and penalties is a legislative act, though similar to a bill of attainder, prescribes punish less severe than capital punishment. A bill of attainder prescribes capital punishment. Bill of pains and penalties is anything else but capital punishment. That's what they are. They're bills of pains and penalties, which is a violation of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. And Article 1, Section 10, Clause 1. And any bought and paid for clerk enforcing administrative law and pretending to be a judge does not have authority to do anything judicial, like issue orders or warrants. And if any clerk pretending to be a judge attempts to do anything judicial, it's a fraud and a nullity, and they accept all liability for their actions. Wayne K. Olson has an oath of office and is a bar member, okay, and so I got a copy of his oath. Says he will protect, preserve, and defend the constitutional laws of the United States and of this state. And Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States requires that I be provided with a republican form of government, which fails to include a military despotism under martial law. So I got his oath attached. Stacy White was hired by Wayne K. Olson. She has an oath of office and a bar member, and that's not available, and so they wouldn't give me her oath. But according to the Texas State Bar, her oath says that she will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and of this state, which means that she has a requirement to provide a Republican form of government. Olson's military, police, Gestapo are always involved in one of their Federal Reserve notes extortion rackets, okay? And under the Clearfield Trust Company versus United States in 1942, governments descend to the level of a mere private corporation, take on characteristics of a mere private citizen, where private, corporate, commercial paper, and Federal Reserve notes and securities checks are concerned. For purposes of suit, such corporations and individuals are regarded as entities entirely separate from government. And under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966, with their Class C misdemeanors that are punishable only by fine, a maximum of $500. An individual judged guilty of a Class C misdemeanor shall be punishable by a fine not to exceed $500. Or they assault you and drag you into the jail and hold you hostage for their ransom, which is a violation of the Geneva Convention. Taking of hostages is prohibited. By demanding a bond under the Federal Tax Lien Act of 1966 before they'll release you. Wayne Olson knows I'm entitled to a Republican form of government, which fails to include any military commissioners operating under General Orders 100, the Lieber Code. Military jurisdictions, two kinds. That's Article 13 of the General Orders 100. And then under the FM 5027-5, the United States Army and Navy Manual for Civil Affairs, 1947, says civil affairs and military government personnel are charged with the following establishment and administration of military commissioners, provost courts, and special military government courts and their jurisdiction and procedures. So all courts are military commissions. Supervision, control, or closing, if necessary, of local criminal and civil courts, supervision of members of the local bar, decisions as to modifications or suspension of local criminal and civil laws. So that's what happens when you get under military occupation. That's why they're wearing military uniforms, folks. and a Republican form of government fails to include any star chambers. That's where they force you to have a liar. Corrupt Star Chamber, Courts of England required respondents to have counsel. Star Chamber stood for swiftness and arbitrary power as a limitation on the common law. And a Republican form of government fails to include any statutes, codes, rules, and regulations because all statutes, codes, rules, and regulations are edicts under martial law as described herein, which apply only to subjects of the enemy and aliens. And this is Dred Scott versus Sanford. But in considering the question before us, it must be borne in mind that there is no law of nations standing between the people of the United States and their government, interfering with their relation to each other. So the point being is that martial law is law of nations, okay? If you have a Republican form of government, there is no law of nations standing between you and your government. So that's again perjury of oath by assaulting you with their edicts under martial law, which means I have a common law right to travel on my private property in the public highway, guaranteed under Article 9, an amendment to the Constitution of the United States. And Stacey White is busy imposing her Euless buddy's military despotism on me, and Stacey White already knows all about this, as evidenced in the notice of void judgment by affidavit that was filed on the 21st of January 2020, true copy of which is attached here to and incorporated herein by reference in its entirety. Wayne K. Olson and Stacey White's oaths of office are to me, because it brings into action and enforces this great and glorious principle that the people are the sovereign of this country, and consequently that fellow citizens and joint sovereigns cannot be degraded by appearing with each other in their own courts to have their controversies determined. Their oath of office is to me, because my ancestors were in the colony of Virginia prior to the War of Independence. Pursuant to the maxim of law, the right of blood and kindred cannot be destroyed by any civil law, and the power which is derived cannot be greater than that from which it is derived. They haven't got a shred of authority over me. And my ancestors wrote the Constitution for the United States of America as evidence in the Statement of Original Status. That's why you got to do an affidavit of corporate denial and have a Statement of Original Status in there. That is absolutely crucial, which is recorded with the Pinal County Recorder in 2013, which is now public policy and the unrebutted truth, which is attached to the Notice of Void Judgment. That was attached to the Notice of Void Judgment that's filed on the 21st of January 2020. It's impossible for Wayne K. Olson or Stacey White, under Wayne K. Olson's supervision, to make a legal determination for me without representing me, and they have no authority to represent me. It's impossible for Wayne K. Olson and Stacey White, under Wayne K. Olson's supervision, to accuse me of anything without perjuring their oath of office, because my ancestors authored the Constitution for the United States of America, which is their authority to operate. Sovereignty itself is, of course, not subject to law, for it is the author and source of law. But in our system, while sovereign powers are delegated to the agencies of government, sovereignty itself remains with the people, by whom and for whom all government exists and acts, which means they both operate under my authority. A sovereign is exempt from suit not because of any formal conception or obsolete theory, but on the logical and practical ground that there can be no legal right as against the authority that makes the law on which the right depends. And that's U.S. Supreme Court 1907. Wayne K. Olson and Stacey White, under Wayne K. Olson's supervision, are perjuring their oath of office by accusing me of being a U.S. citizen when there's no evidence that I am a U.S. citizen, and I have specifically stated that I'm not a U.S. citizen, as evidenced in the Affidavit of Corporate Denial, which is recorded with the Pinal County Recorder and is now public policy and the unrebutted truth, and attached to the Notice of Void Judgment that was filed on the 21st of January 2020. An allegation that a corporation is incorporated shall be taken as true unless denied by the affidavit by the adverse party, his agent or attorney, whether such corporation is public, private, or however created. That's Texas Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 52. Failure of any adverse party to deny under oath allegation that a party is a corporation dispenses with the necessity of proof of that fact. Wayne K. Olson and Stacey White are perjuring their oath of office because there is no evidence of contract, and it's impossible to prove jurisdiction exists absent a substantial nexus with the state, such as a voluntary subscription to license All jurisdictional facts supporting claim that supposed jurisdiction exists must appear on the record of the court. All subjects over which the sovereign power of the state extend are objects of taxation, but those over which it does not extend are exempt from taxation. This proposition may be pronounced as self-evident. It's obvious. The sovereignty of the state extends to everything which exists by its authority or its permission. And all actions under the Texas Penal Code are for breach of contract. A penal action is an action on a penal statute, an action for recovery of penalty given by statute. Where an action is founded entirely upon a statute and that only object of it is to recover a penalty or forfeiture. The words penal and penalty in the strict and primary sense denote a punishment, whether corporal or pecuniary, imposed and enforced by the state for a crime or offense against its laws. The noun penalty is defined forfeiture to be forfeited for non-compliance with an agreement. A penal action is only using edicts under the Roman cult's martial law. A penal action is a civil suit. Wayne K. Olson and Stacy White, under Wayne K. Olson's supervision, are required to know that Texas Transportation Code only applies to commercial vehicles carrying passengers or property for hire. The department shall erect and maintain, this is Title 18, United States Code, Section 31. The term motor vehicle means every description or carriage or contrivance propelled or drawn by mechanical power and used for commercial purposes on the highways and transportation of passengers, passengers of property, or property and cargo. The term used for commercial purposes means the carriage of persons or property for any fare, fee, rate, charge, or other consideration directly or indirectly in connection with any business or other undertaking intended for profit. And then speed signs. In Texas, the department shall erect and maintain on the highways and roads of the state appropriate signs that show the maximum lawful speed for commercial motor vehicles, truck tractors, truck trailers, truck semi-trailers, and motor vehicles engaged in the business of transporting passengers for compensation or hire. This chapter applies to a motor vehicle owned by the state or a political subdivision of the state, and a political subdivision of the state may not require an owner of the motor vehicle to register the vehicle, pay a motor vehicle registration fee, or pay an occupation tax or license fee in connection with the motor vehicle, and that's Texas Transportation Code 502.003. Both of the offenses were brought by the U.S. Gestapo, or Class C misdemeanors. Therefore, they're demanding Federal Reserve notes, extortion to settle a matter under international law, Texas Business and Commerce Codes, which means they waived an immunity they may have enjoyed. And that's Clearfield Trust Company versus United States. In the event that the Roman cult Sestake Trust is guilty of such an offense, the stop was for something that fails to be a crime, since a crime is an offense that is punishable by jail. And the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled that their failure to identify statute requires a crime under Brown versus Texas. And Wayne K. Olson and Stacy White, under Wayne K. Olson's supervision, knows the U.S. Gestapo had no probable cause to stop me. And the Fourth Amendment says that they got to have a crime. So anyways, I go through this thing, and we can go through the whole thing, but it's quite lengthy. We're on page, what page? 13 of 39, and then there's the attachments. There's a total of 149 pages, so we're going to have to start skimming. Anyways, so this goes through the Texas Code of Criminal Procedure, and what's required for their complaint for failure to identify, fugitive from justice. And so I basically go through and pick it apart. Now, in Texas, this is going to work. In another state, you're going to have to come up with similar court citations and statutory citations. Well, the court citations should work. Under the good faith, full faith, and credit clause, they got to accept the court citations, but the statutory citations, you're going to have to come up with local stuff. Anyways, so it goes through all of these citations. Fails to say there's a crime and the only remedy is a fine. So then that brings into Clearfield Trust Company. Therefore, they waived their immunity, and they're assaulting me with the Federal Tax Lien Act. Therefore, they're not operating in their official capacity. We're impersonating peace officers, which is a felony under Texas law. No, the so-called complaint lists the plaintiff as State of Texas, and the Texas Secretary of State has issued a certificate of fact that states that the State of Texas is an assumed name for Deer Park Cash Cow, as evidenced by the certificate of fact that's attached here to, all of which is incorporated herein by reference in its entirety. There's a document number in the lower right corner of the certificate of fact, and you can go to the Texas Secretary of State's website and search for the document number. The following link, you can pull up the document right from the Secretary of State's website. Are officers of the court and required to know the law. They have no immunity when violating a constitutional right, for they're deemed to know the law. And the Deer Park Cash Cow, using their assumed name State of Texas, has no private cause of action for these alleged violations of their penal code. To the extent the Deer Park Cash Cow seeks to hold me liable for alleged violations of the Texas Penal Code, such a claim is without a basis in law or fact. Texas does not recognize private cause of action for penal code violations. Therefore, Deer Park Cash Cow LLC's claim for any alleged violation of the Texas Penal Code are meritless and fail as a matter of law. Wayne K. Olson and Stacy White, under Wayne K. Olson's, know that I have a common law right to travel with my private property on the public highway, guaranteed under Article 9, an amendment to the Constitution. And the right to travel is a bunch of court citations on the right to travel. And even under their private international law, Texas Business and Commerce Code, people have a right to own consumer goods instead of business equipment. And there's court citations for that, lots of them. And the Texas Constitution, Article 8, Section 1, the legislature by general law shall exempt from ad valorem taxation household goods not held or used for the production of income, and personal effects not held or used for the production of income. Texas edicts under martial law require that no political subdivision require anybody to register their vehicle, pay a tax for the vehicle, or pay, and that's Texas Transportation Code. And the Supreme Court of the United States has ruled that income is corporate profits. Therefore, there is no crime, there's no probable cause to stop me in the first place, which means there's no lawful arrest and no requirement to produce identification under their edict, even if I was one of their corporate slaves. If I am a man, it's impossible for me to be a U.S. citizen under their edicts because I'm white, as evidenced in their own police report. And this is 42 U.S.C. 1982. All citizens of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory as is enjoyed by white citizens thereof to inherit, lease, purchase, sell, hold, and convey real and personal property. The so-called 14th Amendment requires that only persons born or naturalized. And I was born in Canada. These fucking pigs. Anyways, as evidenced, it goes into the right of blood and kindred cannot be destroyed by any civil law, and the power which is derived cannot be greater than that from which it is derived. All of which is evidenced in the Statement of Original Status and the Corporate Denial Affidavit. It's recorded with the Pinal County Recorder and the U.S. passport issued to me. So then it talks about the two United States of America. Under the Articles of Confederation, it's the United States of America. The persons declared to be citizens are all persons born or naturalized United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. The evident meaning of these last words is not merely subject in some respect or degree to the jurisdiction of the United States, but completely subject. So they're assaulting me with their quasi-contract. And that's what this is all about here. And they're fabricating a debt, imprisoning people for debt, which is a violation of the Texas Constitution, the piece of shit Constitution, that they ignore unless it's some political agenda. That's what it comes down to, these fucking pigs. They're tampering with physical evidence. Pecuniary cause, such as arise either from the withholding ecclesiastical dues or the doing or neglecting some act relating to the church whereby some damage accrues to the plaintiff towards obtaining satisfaction for which he is permitted to institute a suit in the spiritual court. Such, for instance, are the subtraction, withholding of tithes from the parson or vicar, the non-payment of ecclesiastical dues to the clergy. Why do you think people were leaving Europe in droves with this kind of crap going on? Thereby subjecting me to their satanic religious ceremony in violation of their 18 U.S.C. 247, as evidenced in the notice of void judgment. Okay, that notice of void judgment keeps coming up in here again and again, and it's all evidenced in the notice of void judgment. So it's all in here, time and time again. And the Hague Convention related to trusts. And Wayne K. Olson and Stacey White know all about this as evidenced in the notice of void judgment. And it just says it again and again. They know all about this as evidenced in the notice of void judgment, and they're bar members and they're required to know. So anyways, I'm hoping I can get them disbarred. I can certainly bring some heat down on them. Kerry says that he's never seen one of these things filed and they didn't investigate it. So they're representing me without authority. They're perjuring their oath of office. You know, it just goes on from there. So this is page 27 now. So I just go through all of it, official oppression and the felonies. Okay, so this is all going to list felonies, and I use their words. This is all these paragraphs here are the felonies that they're involved in. And so this is all just one felony after another. So 35. So we're getting close to the end of the and then there's a notice of void judgment that's going to be attached. So what I'm going to do is that's going to be separate. Okay, so there's the notice of void judgment that's attached. We're going to make a separate video about the notice of void judgment. That way we can shorten this one down, because this one's already quite lengthy. Anyways, so that ought to get you going, and you attach all your evidence to it, and you start filing bar grievances, okay? And you got their oaths of office, and your notice of void judgment, and your corporate denial affidavit. You start filing bar grievances, and these are against the prosecutors and the liars, okay? The liars. Okay, you go after these liars. And that's going to create a problem for them. And so we'll see. That's all you can do is just build a case and go after them like a bloodhound. And so anyways, this hopefully will get you going. A link, I'll have a Word file for this linked below this video. And it might be, I might have to do a short video if YouTube takes it down or starts demonetizing it. I might have to do a short video and upload it at Brighteon or Library or something like that. But if I do, I'll make a short video and say go and look at this other one. Again, I'm starting to wonder if the Republic is dead, because these bar members are basically just doing whatever the heck they want. And, we need to, the people need to rise up, and we need to stretch some necks is what we need to do, in my opinion. I'd like to see some of them get their necks stretched. It wouldn't take too many, and the rest of them would get the message. But, they're just doing whatever they want to do. And, it's all military dictatorship. You're seeing a full military dictatorship going on right now. And people say Trump is helping. I don't know if he's helping the military dictatorship or not. I hope he's not. But the bottom line is that he's not doing anything to put a stop to it, or not doing much, it doesn't seem. Certainly Barr ain't doing much. I'm having just as much trouble with the U.S. attorney, the whore, ignoring everything. Matter of fact, I just sent something to Trump. We'll see what he does with it. But so Anyways, that's the end of this one. This will get you going. This is the bar member complaint. Thanks for watching. Take care. Be strong.